Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. So we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Roach Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our video. We've got the rematch of one of the best rivalries now in college basketball in the SEC between the Alabama Crimson Tide, this time traveling on the road to face the Auburn Tigers in a top 20 showdown. I did a prediction for the Alabama game against the Auburn Tigers a couple weeks ago. That was in Tuscaloosa, and I did mistakenly pick the Auburn Tigers, who were ranked at the time in the top 10, against the Alabama Crimson Tide, who were unranked. But that was a fantastic game. It went down to the wire. But this time around, we've got both teams ranked in the top 20, and this game has a lot of stakes in the SEC standings right now. Alabama's 8-1 in the conference, 16-6 overall, which goes to show you how much better they are playing now than they were at the beginning of the season in the non-conference. But Alabama did have some tough non-conference games. Nate Oats kind of taking that Tom Izzo scheduling approach. But South Carolina and Auburn are right on Alabama's heels at 7-2 in the SEC. If Auburn can win this game, they can tie up Alabama at the top of the SEC standings at 8-2 in the conference. But who would have thought that Alabama, South Carolina, and Auburn would have been the top three teams in the SEC standings at any point during the college basketball season? It's unbelievable. Tennessee's below that at 6-2. Kentucky is at 5-4, still within shouting distance. They're probably rooting for an Alabama loss, so they can only be 2 games back. But still, both of these teams are playing very well, Alabama and Auburn, and it is going to be a dogfight to see who wins this rematch, whether Auburn can get revenge or if Alabama can get the season sweep of the Auburn Tigers this season, just like they did last year. So Alabama would be able to win 4 games in a row if they can get this win. But I'm going to preview and predict who I believe is going to win the rematch between Alabama and Auburn, so let's get into it. This game is on ESPN2 on Wednesday night. Really should be an ESPN game, but the NBA is getting that coverage again on Wednesday night. But I'm sure a lot of people will still tune into this game because it's going to be a fantastic matchup, and the FBI predictor reflects how competitive this game is probably going to be, with the Alabama Crimson Tide being given a 40% chance to win to the Auburn Tigers 60% chance to win. The home court advantage is a big reason why Auburn is favored in the FBI predictor. The spread is going to be very tight as well. Auburn has the better overall record at 18-4 to Alabama's 16-6, but Alabama has the more important record in conference play with an 8-1 record to Auburn's 7-2 record. But the Alabama Crimson Tide, it's like the inverse of what Auburn was coming into this rivalry game the first time around. Auburn was one of the hottest teams in college basketball coming into the first matchup this year between these two teams. But now Alabama is one of the hottest teams in college basketball coming into this game because the Crimson Tide were not even ranked when they faced Auburn the first time around. Now they're up to 16th in the AP poll. Auburn was at number 8. They fell a few spots after losing to Alabama. Then they lost a game after that as well, but now they're back up to number 12. Both teams are playing well. And when you look at Alabama, again, in the non-conference, they suffered some tough losses to Ohio State and Clemson, Purdue, Creighton, and Arizona, but this is a better basketball team than they were then. Outside of a loss to Tennessee on the road, they've won their last 4 games, beating Auburn in the first matchup in this rivalry this season, and they've knocked off LSU, Georgia on the road, and Mississippi State. Granted, those teams aren't as good as Auburn, but it still goes to show you how well Alabama's playing, that they have won all those games in a row, and they just blew out a pretty decent Mississippi State squad by 30 points. And when you look at Alabama's roster, Mark Sears is the engine that is making this offense run. And why are they playing so well? Because Mark Sears is putting up the best stats of his entire college basketball career the last few weeks, and now he's kind of entering the player of the year conversation. Probably Zach Edey, RJ Davis, and Dalton Knecht are the favorites to win the award, but Mark Sears is an under-the-radar pick for how well he has been playing lately, leading Alabama to the meteoric rise that they have had this season, now ranked in the top 20 and leading in the SEC standings. They could not do it without him. He's averaging 20 points per game, 4 rebounds and 4 assists. He does a little bit of everything, and he shoots 45% from 3 and 85% at the free throw line, and he shoots at 52% from the field overall, and that is a fantastic shooting percentage for a guard of his stature. Aaron Estrada is averaging 13 points per game and 5 rebounds. He's having a good season after transferring into the program. Grant Nelson, another transfer for the Crimson Tide coming in from North Dakota State. He's averaging 12 points per game and 6 boards. He's kind of underperformed a bit compared to how well some people thought he was going to play, but he's still playing well. His three-point shooting percentage is struggling at 26%. He's a better three-point shooter than that, but he has struggled to adjust to the SEC. But you can tell he's a good shooter with him shooting 87% at the free throw line. And then you got Rylan Griffin, who has been playing much better lately as well, averaging 10 points per game. The depth goes on and on. Latrell Wrightsell Jr., Jaron Stevenson, Sam Walters, Nick Pringle. It all adds up to Alabama as a basketball team averaging 90 points per game right now. So even good defensive teams are struggling to slow down this Alabama Crimson Tide team. Outside of Tennessee, nobody has been able to do it in recent weeks. And then also they shoot 38% from three and 79% from the free throw line. All those numbers are fantastic, but they're going on the road to face the Auburn Tigers in a very tough environment. Can Alabama go on the road and put up those stats in a tough environment? That will definitely be a determining factor in who wins this game. And then on the Auburn side, they lost to Baylor to start out the season, and then they had the bad loss at Appalachian State, but then that woke them up. They blew out Indiana, and then once they've been in SEC play, they were rolling, blew out Chris Beard's Ole Miss squad, but then they suffered the loss to their rival in Tuscaloosa at Alabama. Then they lost at Mississippi State, which was a tough loss, maybe a bit of a hangover from the Alabama loss, but after that, they blew out Vanderbilt, and they won at Ole Miss again. So Auburn's still playing good basketball. That's why they're ranked in the top 15. They only have the 2 SEC losses. But the Auburn Tigers, despite the fact that Bruce Pearl has such a talented team this season, they don't really have that go-to guy like Alabama does with Mark Sears right now. Johni Broome is the closest thing that Auburn has to that. He's averaging 16 points per game and 8 rebounds. He's playing very well, much better than he did last season, and he can step out and shoot the three ball. He's shooting 34% from three. Struggles at the line only at 62%. But it's kind of a double-edged sword because on the one hand, you can look at it and say, well, not having a go-to scorer and having so many guys that can chip in games, that makes it harder for defenses to slow down a team because you have to focus in on so many guys. But sometimes when you are in a dogfight at the end of a game, you just need a bucket to go in from your go-to scorer. That can sometimes help you grind out wins. And Auburn couldn't do that at Alabama last time out because they really didn't have anybody down the stretch who could knock down that bucket like Mark Sears was for Alabama. But Johni Broome, he is a really good player. He'll have to definitely step up and have a really good game in this one, probably a 20-point effort if Auburn is going to win. Jalen Williams is averaging 13 points per game. Chad Baker, Mazzara averaging 9 points per game. Aden Holloway, 9 points per game. Denver Jones, Katie Johnson, Trey Donaldson all average 7 points per game. Dylan Cardwell chips in 5 points per game. And that is the biggest strength to this Auburn basketball team is the depth. The Crimson Tide do have more depth than people give them credit for because guys like Mark Sears and Grant Nelson get most of the attention. But Auburn definitely has one of the deepest teams in college basketball this season, and that's what makes it tough to beat them. They average as a team 82 points per game, which is 8 points less than the Alabama Crimson Tide. That's still a really good statistic. They only shoot 33% from three, 76% from the free throw line, and 46% from the field as a team. Both teams have been improving on the defensive end. Sometimes Auburn really clamps down on D. Other games they do struggle. But if the Auburn Tigers are going to knock off the Alabama Crimson Tide, their defense has to slow down Alabama and keep them under 75 points if they can, because if they give up more than that, it's going to be very tough for them to knock off the Crimson Tide. Looking at the bracket matrix, Alabama is a 3 seed right now. Auburn is a 5 seed. So Auburn could use this win a little bit more than Alabama, even though both teams are safely in the NCAA tournament field. And in the net rankings, Alabama is at number 5 and Auburn is at number 8. Kind of ironic, Alabama has a higher net ranking despite having a worse overall record. But if you look at the quadrants, Alabama only has 9 wins over quad 3 and quad 4, where Auburn has 12 wins. So Alabama has more wins over solid teams than Auburn does, which is why they are higher in the net rankings. But who do I think is going to win the rematch in this rivalry game in the SEC between Alabama and the Auburn Tigers? I picked the Auburn Tigers to win last time out, like I said before, and they could not win at Alabama, but now they've got a chance to get revenge. And Auburn is a tough environment, especially when they're playing a top 25 team, and especially when they're playing their rival in the Alabama Crimson Tide. It's going to be a sellout crowd, and Alabama, their offense is elite right now, one of the best in college basketball. But sometimes if you get rattled by the road atmosphere, you can slip up and find a way to lose, especially if your defense cannot slow down the team that you are playing. And Auburn has a good enough offense to put up points. But this game's going to come down to if Auburn can get enough of their scorers to play well and and Johni Broome can have a good enough game, like an over 20-point, 10-rebound type of game, to be able to counter what Mark Sears is going to give. Because I believe Mark Sears is going to have a big game in this one. He's one of the hottest players in college basketball right now. He's rolling. It is tough to stop him. He's in the Player of the Year race, even though his likelihood to winning the award is very slim. But Alabama's offense is playing so well, and Mark Sears, being the head of the snake, is making it so tough to knock off the Crimson Tide right now. I'm a little weary with Alabama because Auburn was rolling coming into the first matchup in this series, and then they slipped up. Alabama could do it as well because they're playing so well. They might end up slipping up in this game on the road at their rival. But I'm going to go with the Alabama Crimson Tide to beat the Auburn Tigers 78-77. I believe this game is going to go down to the final bucket, and I think the Auburn Tigers, it's going to look like they're going to end up winning this game behind their home crowd. They are playing good basketball right now, but not as good of basketball as the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I believe at the end of the game, on the final bucket, Mark Sears is either going to hit the game-winning shot or he's going to assist to Grant Nelson or Aaron Estrada, somebody on the basketball team, to knock down the final shot. And Alabama will be able to knock off their rival, the Auburn Tigers, for the second time this season to get a season sweep in the regular season, and for Alabama to get their fourth win in a row in this series, which will be very tough for Bruce Pearl's squad to swallow. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below about whether you think the Auburn Tigers can get revenge on the Alabama Crimson Tide and Bruce Pearl's team will be able to top the Alabama Crimson Tide in the standings and get a big quality win to help boost their NCAA tournament resume that is lacking a little bit on quality wins, or whether you believe that the Alabama Crimson Tide will get a regular season sweep of the Auburn Tigers and Alabama will be able to get a 2-game lead over the Auburn Tigers in the SEC standings. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I'll see you next time.